No one.
That's a no one. Okay. Right. Well, thank you everybody for being generous with your time today and joining our webinar on the 5 workflows to target AuM. And I suppose, the first question is, what do most people consider to be automations and workflows? And, most organizations don't even consider them. They think automations and workflow is something where, it's something you turn on and off, which is your marketing budget. And that's as automated as people go. People don't really, organizations, even at the C-level, don't even go into the, the actual nuts and bolts of what makes marketing work and how marketing is all built around automation, around workflow. And fundamentally, what underpins automation and workflow is just pure doggedness and discipline. And that's what I'll hopefully take you through in the next 20 minutes. So the question is, why even bother with marketing? And there are kind of 3 reasons for that. I think the first thing is around the asymmetric nature of AuM, especially in inflows. And in the last quarter, most of inflows went into funds that were over 5 billion. Okay. And that's information that, we got from the guys at OPLS. And it's almost like, if you're big, you'll attract money. And if you're small, you've got to fight for it. And marketing automation is just about, fighting smarter. And what is also interesting about, AuM, that it's asymmetric, is that not only is it about inflows, it's also about redemptions. It's that the smaller you are, so if you're under 1 billion, you have disproportionately more redemptions than even mid-sized firms during the same period. So if you're a small manager, and small being a relative term, anybody who tells me, $1 billion is not a large amount of money, isn't a large amount of money, needs their head checked. But in the fund world, not being at a critical mass affects not only your money coming in and your money going out. And what marketing has a challenge. So if you're a smaller manager, the challenge you have is that you won't be able to have the share of voice that somebody like BlackRock, Vanguard, or PIMCO would have. Because not only, if you spend money on marketing, they can spend, 2 orders of magnitude more. So you'll never have that share of voice. And people would just buy their funds, whether active or passive, because they're just them. And the only way you can actually differentiate, your fund is how you communicate with potential investors and how do you communicate with prospective investors, people that potentially could recommend your fund, investors already, people you can direct message over social. That is the area to be concentrating. It's all about communicating even more. And once you're tired of communicating, keep communicating. But the challenge with that, especially if you're a small manager, is how do you do that on a consistent basis? How do you do that communication in a way that doesn't eke up all your time, so you're not focusing on the actual portfolio management or on investor relations? How do you automate that process? And that's really what we're kind of going into today. And there are 5 areas that we have found to be incredibly useful in building workflows. The first is a nurture campaign. And we call this a flow of consciousness, where Harvard University says it, so it must be right, that it takes 7 to 11 touches for people to know and understand what you are about, what you stand for, how are you different from other fund managers, other funds. So that's kind of the first part. The second part is when you've got all this noise that sits around your social marketing, your website, your investor portal, your email marketing, what is the way that you can take all that information and make that accessible to your relationship managers or your salespeople or your business development people so they can actively target AuM. The third is building automation around events, whether it's online events such as using BrightTALk or Vimeo or Zoom, to actual face-to-face events, which hopefully we're kind of going to probably in the next 6 months. Events are online, offline events are going to be hopefully back in vogue. The other part to workflows is building information into your CRM. So it's not just knowing who's opening your emails, but understanding their journey with you. And finally, is one that's overlooked incredibly in the fund marketing world, is preference centers. And preference centers is one of those things where you get an illusion of choice. But actually, it's a bit like when you go for a meal and they ask you, do you want red wine or red wine or white wine? It's almost like you don't have a choice. You're going to order wine, whichever way you look at it, right? And it's an illusion of choice that you have a choice not to have one. So are we going to a bit of the psychology that sits behind preference centers, that even though people may think about unsubscribing, they can actually learn much more about you in that actual unsubscribe process. So the first thing to look at is a nurture campaign, and what is that all about? And what I'm hopefully going to show you today is how do you join the dots between all the marketing you're doing and raising AuM. And this slide will be a recurring theme in this webinar. Okay, so what's a nurture campaign? I mean, a nurture campaign is fundamentally the ability to get to a point where from your website, from your social engagement, from whatever you're doing, you've basically done two critical things. You've got someone's name and you've got somebody's email. And this could be at an event, this could be people downloading a white paper, a fact sheets, some thought leadership you put out on your website. And then the process is, how can you create this stream of consciousness? And the way you do it is, in effect, is by getting off emails that you'd like to send them. And this is what we're doing here. This is what we do on our website, actually. We have 4 articles we send out. So if someone registers on our website, they get 4 articles. The first 3 are a week apart, and the last one is 2 weeks apart. And what the idea here is that what we're not doing is we're not calling them up immediately. We're kind of nurturing them along the way. And as soon as they actually engage with an email, so that means they download the fact sheet, they download the PDF, they download the white paper, we actually stop sending them the emails. And or we have a process where once they've gone through the last one, if they haven't engaged with us, we take them off our list. If they have, we then put them into our CRM. So what that means is that as you build your content, as you're investing more time and resource into creating content, it gives you the ability to automate the people leaving their details behind with you. Because the biggest barrier onto downloading something is leaving lots of information. So all you want is a breadcrumb of information so that you can effectively start building up this train of consciousness. So once you've done that, you're actually in a position where it's not just a one-hit wonder, like someone's downloaded something that's cost us money to put together, but actually it's now, they're probably on that, the fly paper of your marketing right now. And now it's up to you as a fund marketer to actually get them further down that marketing pipeline. So in many ways, trying to be clever, didn't work. There we go. So the first step in actually joining the dots between the money and the marketing effort you're putting in to raising AuM is this drip campaign, this nurture campaign that you put together. Okay, so that's the first part of this. The first part is creating a nurture campaign. The next part is, how do you take all the activities you're doing across your website, your investor portal, and your replays that you're doing, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever channels you're distributing your content on, it's incredibly inefficient to say, right, we're going to have one spreadsheet for our investor portal, one for our website, one for Google Analytics. And what we've found is the more channels you actually start distributing content on, the less efficient you are. You're almost 15% more inefficient per channel than you are if you only just email people. So there is a law of diminishing returns that goes on the more marketing you do. So what's really important is that you've got the ability to take all this data and present it to the business development team or the sales team in a way that they can consume. And one of the most effective ways we've found is, we've got a concept of a lead deck, and it basically splits out all the digital engagement into 4 distinct baskets. Low-hanging fruit, people who are actively engaged with you, but you haven't spoken to them. Cross-selling opportunities, investors in one fund that are looking at things they're not invested in, your redemption risk, and your marketing alpha. And marketing alpha is all about people who have not engaged with you for the last 6 months, but in the last month have engaged with you. Now, yes, you can do this in Excel, you can do this in all kinds of other platforms, but you've got to bring this data together. And that in itself has taken organizations 2 to 3 months to pull a report together. So we really found this opportunity to say, there is a way to bring all this together. And that's kind of what we're doing for our clients. So having lead scoring in a way that is just not about, someone's been to the website 5 times, let them score in. It's about bringing all the data together and in real time delivering that to the business development, relationship managers and sales team. So that really is important when it comes to lead scoring. The thing about lead scoring not to ever do is to build these kind of automations, which I just spoke about. So if someone's been on the website 5 times, they've downloaded a white paper 3 times, and they've done that in the last 6 months, that's a lead. The trouble is with that is that very quickly you stop becoming a marketer and you become a programmer. And we've seen countless clients that we've migrated away from systems like this into what we do, because it just becomes unmanageable. And the marketing team stop hiring marketers and seem to end up hiring analysts. So the marketing budget effectively is not going on marketing. So what we've kind of said is actually what you want to be able to do is not to do this programmatically, which is, the traditional way of looking at things, but is to do it heuristically. And by heuristically, I mean, you actually tell the system what things you're interested in that people are doing and what things you're not interested in, and do it on a sliding relative scale. Because if you do that on a sliding relative scale, it's much easier to program the brain of the machine learning or AI to actually work out what it considers significant and what it doesn't. And doing this effectively saves you in a large fund, probably 2 people, and in a smaller fund, absolutely stops the marketing person not only doing everything but just becoming a programmer. So this is an incredibly useful workflow / automation. In fact, it's an anti-automation if you think about it. But having this at doing your lead scoring is far more useful. Okay, so that's the world of lead scoring. So that's the second part: nurture lead scoring, and getting your marketing budget to marketing to actually help you raise AuM. So that's the second block of is that a wall? Let's call it a bridge. Okay, so that's lead scoring. The next thing is events. Now, the question is, how do you increase people's attendance at events, or if there are calls you're running, how do you do that? And this is probably for us and our clients when we use this model ourselves. is probably the most powerful model if you are doing online or offline events. If you're doing monthly calls or weekly calls, is basically having a workflow that effectively works out whether people opened an email or didn't. And from there, if they actually opened the link to the invite and didn't register, or they just opened the link. And from that, you can actually build a remailing campaign. And we've, our anecdotal evidence from our clients has been that this has increased attendance at events. This is kind of pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, online and offline, from 20 to 30%. And we kind of see this even on our webinars. We double our attendance when we run this automation through our own system. So if there's one thing to take away from today, this is that. It's like, if you do one thing, do this. Remail based on activity. Okay, so that's one way of increasing attendance. The other one is what you do post-event. So let's say you're running on Zoom, you're using BrightTALk, Asset TV, anything like that. What do you do? And effectively on this webinar, they're the kind people who have joined this webinar. So you've attended the webinar, so well done you. And in our workflow, you get updated into our CRM, and in our CRM, we'll actually create some sales activity based on that, whether you're a client, whether you're a prospect, how many times have you visited our website, all that kind of stuff goes in to then generate a call. Then we've got the replay. So after this, there's going to be a replay of this, and we send it out to people. We then access their behavior, and we then decide, put that information in our CRM, and some sales activities created. And some of that could be an automation to say, call this person in 4 weeks. Here's a client. If it's a client, it goes to our client success process. So Susan over there, in their monthly call, will make a reference to this webinar and how they found it. And there's a process that sits behind there. But the most useful are the people who did not attend. And the question is, why do we care about people who didn't attend? Surely, they're the devil's armpit. How dare they not listen to Paul Dass talk about, some form of BS or the other? Well, it's interesting because there's a workflow that sits behind that. And that workflow is we just basically we add them to our nurture program and keep inviting them to stuff. And interestingly enough, at some point, unless they unsubscribe, but then I'll take you through the preference center, they get to a point where they either attend or they watch a replay, and then they're in our CRM. So in many ways, all these processes are automated till the very point we get to the green where a salesperson gets involved. So the salesperson isn't calling everybody up who leaves their details on our client's website. It's only when they get to a critical mass does that happen. So if you're using products like Zoom, BrightTALk, Asset TV, with their API, they give you all this data. And once clients of ours have actually, you obviously buy BrightTALk, Asset TV, it costs you a pretty penny. But once you start using their API, that automation is incredibly, incredibly useful, and really demonstrates a fantastic ROI on that investment. Because the investment on Asset TV, BrightTALk is two: content and the actual subscription. So again, if you are happy with the previous workflow, this is another workflow to definitely build into your events. So there we go. That's kind of the world of the next building block. So you've got nurture, you've got lead scoring, and now you've got event automation. So the next thing we're going to look at is CRM automation. And CRM automation is its own topic in itself. But what's really important and to kind of look at is now the investor journey is totally digital right now. And so you actually don't know, it's not just about opening an email. It is, did they access thought leadership? Have they been on the website? Have they been to an event? Did they engage on social media? Did they access some press? Are they part of an inbound campaign, outbound campaign? Geez, I mean, it's so many touch points. And, plugging my book, the book I wrote was about, how do you target the invisible investor? It's about getting all this data into one place in your CRM. So if you kind of look at this section here, having a CRM where you get a digital footprint of what people have been doing is really, really useful for, your sales team, your IR team, to get an immediate flavor on who they're about to talk to. And again, that's really important as well, because again, with your CRM, how many times do you bin your CRM? Yeah, I mean, because CRMs generally are not fit for purpose. I mean, you're sold a dream, but ultimately it's a very expensive Rolodex. But the way you actually generate value in your CRM is having that digital data in your CRM, that digital footprint in there. And from there, you can build automations such as if someone's downloaded a fact sheet, if somebody has been on the website, if, whatever automation you feel like, or this person appears in our lead deck, you can from there build an activity for the salesperson to do. And we're doing that a lot with our fund managers, where fund managers aren't even looking at the contacts. They're basically going into a report and from there are calling up people. So it's a big topic, CRM automation, but it's another building block in this. So here are the 4 blocks. The final block that I'm going to talk about today is preference centers. And there is nobody in our sector who does a decent preference center, because most people think of preference centers about, somebody's coming in, they're going to unsubscribe, that's the end of it, GDPR, you've got me again. But what really this is about, and the people who do this really well, is Spotify. The number of times I'm like sick and tired of Spotify, but I go in, I'm saying, right, I'm going to unsubscribe from this. And I get the option all of a sudden for all these other things that Spotify does. It can recommend music, it can tell me about new music, play my playlist updates, concert notifications, artist updates. It's suddenly, I'm not if I unsubscribe from, your fun newsletter, I'm also unsubscribing from these other categories of areas as well. So it could be thought leadership, manager commentary, market commentary. It could be something such as, pick it. And this is kind of your homework. If I gave you everything, right, I wouldn't have a business. But, that's not the point. This is kind of really down to how can you, do the thought experiment to say, what can I offer on my unsubscribe page that actually tells them more about what we as a fund do. It could be that you do UCITS that nobody knows about. It could be, you're on Bloomberg TV. It could be anything like that. So it's not a bad place to advertise what you do. And Spotify, and I just can't get rid of Spotify now because I feel like I'm missing out. And there is that, what isn't it? Fear of missing out. FOMO. That's it. FOMO. This is all about FOMO. And even though it's just an illusion of choice, because you're giving people the choice to unsubscribe, but actually you've created an illusion. And it's that same illusion, red wine, white wine, sir, or sparkling water or still water. You're not going to be that horrible person who says, oh, I'll have tap. You don't want to do that. And in many ways, it's just an illusion. Yeah, sure, you can have tap. There's no crime against it. And that's no problem. But it's just that illusion that you feel like you don't have that choice. And you've got to really build your courage to say, actually, I'll have spirits or I'm going to have tap water. So illusion of choice. So that forms those building blocks, those 5 building blocks. So if I can remember, it's nurture, lead scoring, event automation, CRM automation, and preference centers. Those workflows is kind of what sits between all the marketing spend you're doing and that moment where, you know, you're having to justify, you know, all that money to your C-level or to your investors or, you know, whoever runs your company, to say what worked, what didn't work, where's the AuM? And the way AuM comes from is actually not those marketing activities, but it's the automation that kind of sits in front of them and sits behind them. So that's it. That is the webinar for today. You know, there's more on our website about this. If you want to, you know, book a time with me for just to talk through your own marketing. If you are not on our database, you'll get a call from Jason. If you are on a database, you'll get a call from Susan. And if I really like you, I may just call you myself. But thank you all for joining us. I'd love to hear your thoughts from today. If anybody had any questions, would like, you know, any more insights, we are going to send out the replay. So I'm here for another few minutes. Oh, Nancy, pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thank you for your kind words. Has anybody else got any queries or questions? One question has come through. Is there a way to collate all of the investors into different phases of the marketing funnel to see where they fall? Absolutely, absolutely. and the answer live, here we go. So the way you do that is there are a couple of ways. And the easiest way is to tag your content. So what would happen is, you know, you can tag your content to say people. So if I let me just go back to a slide here, just bear with me. So if you go to, bear with me a second. Here we go. This slide here. So basically, it's tagging your content, your thought leadership content, your website content, all the content you have. And once you've tagged them, is kind of work out, you know, what does your investor journey look like? And when you're running, and you can actually see on a, you know, whether it's on a heat map or even something within a simple filter report in Excel, is to see where are people coming in and where is their, you know, where are they going to? Are they going to from thought leadership? Are they going to events? From social media? Are they going to the website? And that journey, you'll actually be able to map that journey out very quickly. You know, and probably within 6 months, you will know pretty much every journey that investors are going through. And when I say investors, you mean the end result being an investor. Previously, you don't know who they are. So you'll actually be able to see what content they're engaging with. And once you can actually see the content that people are engaging with, it becomes very easy to actually see, you know, what phases are they in. So you define the phases and then you can see where they're in. So it's you know, right now, when you don't tag content, it's unknown unknowns. So if you've got unknown unknowns, you're kind of stuffed. So, you know, it's that typical case. You'll know half of what your marketing budget is effective, but you just don't know which half. So tagging content is incredibly useful to do, Marissa. So I hope that was helpful. I've got another question come in. What are the characteristics of a good email sequence? How does the initial email differ from the latter? At what point do you pivot from offering value, thought leadership, asking for a call, or pitching the fund? Really good question. And the only way to do this is to test it. And the way to test it is basically exactly as you said, you know, have a sequence of emails that talks about thought leadership on a, say, 6 month basis. And from there, collect the analytics to actually get to the point to say, okay, this person has scored in, let's give them a call. And, you know, and that kind of feeds into, I'm hoping I can get this. Let me see if I've got this right. Yeah. And that kind of feeds into, well, partly feeds into the nurture campaign, but also I would say feeds into the lead deck, where the lead deck itself is working out who are the people you need to be calling. It is very tempting to just call people, but I have to say credibility and trust in what we do as fund marketers is critical. And it's just that judgment call you've got to make to say, you know, I'm putting thought leadership pieces out there, you know, when is the right time? And that's where, you know, it's worth doing something like, you know, 6 thought leadership pieces, 4 thought leadership pieces, 2 thought leadership pieces, 1 thought leadership piece, and then kind of see from there what your outcomes are. It generally tends to be quite counterintuitive, in as much as, you know, some of our clients have found 1 piece actually works, and some have found that 1 actually doesn't work. They've got to kind of find a mix, and then you've got to look at topics. You know, what topics do you want to talk about? Do you talk about broad topics, or do you know, hopefully talk about specific topics? And the other thing to look at, if you go on our website, it's also the format of the email. There's a particular format, and if you go on our website and search for the best email templates, you'll actually see Guinness Fund Management probably has the best template out there on how they promote their funds. So that's worth looking at too. So it's content, it's, you know, composition, and it's also about just doing the analysis to see what's working, what's not working. You know, we know for us what works because we've experimented with subject lines, but it is again, it's about the analysis you have to do and the discipline that's kind of sits behind it. So yeah, I hope you found that useful, Scott. Chris has got a question. What are your thoughts about multilingual assimilation? The fund industry appears to struggle somewhat in this area. I'm gonna have to be perfectly honest with you. I am going to have to ask somebody, what does that mean? It sounds something straight out of Star Trek and the Borgs. So if you just let me know what you mean by multilingual assimilation, I'll just answer another question if that's okay. Here we go. So I've got a question. Can someone resubscribe to a newsletter they previously unsubscribed to? And so is that a manual process? Yes. GDPR and any kind of compliance element will people have to physically contact you to resubscribe. I actually don't know any other way around that. Okay. You've got another question. Are analytics updated in real time, or is there data dumps at a specific point during the week and the day? Great question. Some systems have the ability to do it in real time. Ours does. Others don't, and that's where you kind of get into the world of disparate systems that take weeks for data to be made available, and then it's too late. So yeah, it just depends. It just depends on the urgency of the reporting you need. But we've kind of found, whilst the iron is hot, it's worth getting the information to the sales teams. Okay. I am looking at what multilingual assimilation means. It's still not helping. Even Google's failed on that one. So I'm going to have to go back to the chat. Here we go. Handling queries. Thank you. Thank you very much. Handling queries and interest in all languages from a central point in one CRM. So this is one of those questions around, so we've got clients who are supporting Spanish, English, French, and kanji. So the challenge with all this is that they are effectively running 4 teams. And whilst, you can create automations. So we have an automation for this client that they generate 1 fact sheet and 1 email, and it automatically sends them out to people depending on their preference of languages. It's the inbound queries that become the challenge. So on that basis, those internal teams are split into 4. And something as visceral as your language, you can have a bot that will answer your queries, but very quickly, within 2 queries, you immediately have lost the person who's come to you. So outbound, fairly simple to do. Inbound, incredibly hard to do. And, clients of ours have found it, almost impossible to have people who can talk financial language fluently in 2 or 3 languages. So it's almost like creating your own silos of team, which is a management nightmare, but hopefully, the diminishing returns hopefully has some incremental benefit in the assets you raise. Okay. Hopefully that was useful, Chris. There's no silver bullet for that one, I'm afraid. Okay. So I think we're out of questions unless somebody is being very shy on their keyboard. But you can always troll me later. Okay. Well, once again, thank you everybody for joining. We will be sending a replay out later this afternoon, and hopefully going forwards, we've shed some light on workflows, marketing, and all the things that kind of go to build, a marketing system that helps you raise AuM. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful weekend wherever you are. Goodbye.